Productivity. It is basically a word used to describe efficiency of a person. It is also the distinguishing factor between the person who goes to sleep satisfied and the person who goes to sleep overwhelmed. Even though I'd say that I have a good relationship with productivity and time in general, but there are some days when I feel completely apt and other days when I feel that I could have done so much better at my work. And the worst part is I don't even know what leads me feeling that particular way because I keep my schedule and my work routine the same for the majority of the week. Maybe because of the fact that I don't track my productivity level, which in turn makes me feel clueless about what did I do that impacted my productivity level, either in a good or in a bad way. So this was the problem that I was facing for a really long time. So I thought I'd like to solve this problem by building an Android application using my favorite framework of all time, Flutter. So this application is going to be like a productivity journal wherein the user would be able to log his productivity levels every single night. And along with that, he can also write a short summary of the day, which will make him realize the possible cause of their current productivity levels. And of course, the user will have access to his past productivity levels as well. So this application will basically make the user journal every single day and will make the user to retrospect on their past productivity levels, which might lead to something even more productive. So let's see how this goes. So the very first step would be to set a very clear requirements before we even start designing the application. So this is what I've come up with. The user shall be able to log his productivity levels once a day between 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. The user shall be able to log a short note along with his productivity levels. The user shall be able to retrospect his levels of his past days in a graphical and in a numerical manner as well. So that's all about the function requirements that I can think of as of now. So since this is an original idea, I'd like to start off by creating very rough wireframes of the application, which will then be followed by color palette, typography and mainframe creation. So I want to build this application in such a way that it looks clutter-free, is minimal and looks clean as well, because all of these things combined actually minimizes the cognitive overload on a person. So for the color palette, I'll be going with the color of peace. That is very simple. We'll be going with black, white and an accent color somewhere along the warmer side of the spectrum. And I believe this would be it. So as you can see, here we have the final design. It just turned out exactly what I had expected. It's clean, it's minimal, and I feel this is how a productivity application should be. So before moving into anything technical, let's try to think how this application will function in layman's term. So for this application, we'll be storing all of the user's data onto the local storage. We won't be using any sort of cloud here. So as soon as the user opens the application, the UI layer will want the previous logs of the user from the internal storage. But we have a problem. Since we'll be using something named as shared preferences, which can store data only in string or integer format, but the UI layer can only consume something called as state. So we'll need something in middle to make this conversion happen, namely a business logic. Business logic will take this string, convert it into a JSON, then take the JSON, convert it into a model or an entity, then into a state, which will finally be consumed by the UI. And we'll be using the same exact logic in the reverse order for saving the data. Now let's move towards the architecture. This particular part can get a little too technical for some people, so please just bear with me for the next 2 minutes. So we'll be using an architecture invented by Uncle Bob, titled the Clean Architecture. So if this is the very first time you're hearing about this book, you need to read it. It's basically termed as the Bible of programmers, and every programmer in their lives should definitely read this book. So let me break down the concepts extremely quickly, okay, in the most highest level possible. So Uncle Bob says an application must have 3 layers: presentation, domain, data. Presentation contains everything that the user sees. Domain contains all the business logic. Data is responsible for making API calls, accessing remote data, and local data. Now, all of these layers have sub-layers as well. Presentation layer contains UI and block. Domain layer contains use cases, repositories, entities. Data layer contains model and APIs. So this is how the application is really going to work, considering the architecture as well. So the user is going to open the application, which will send an event to the block. The block will call a particular use case, which will ask a repository for the data. The repository will call the APIs to fetch the data from the local storage. Once the API fetches the data from the local storage, it is going to return an instance of the model class to the repo, which will then return the model to the use case, which will then return an entity to the block, which will then convert the entity into a state which will finally be consumed by the UI. So if you didn't understand a single word I said, it's completely fine, but let me tell you something from my experience. It's the cleanliness of code and the experience that distinguishes between an intermediate and an advanced developer. So I'll essentially be coding everything that we just decided a few minutes ago, adding some extra functionalities, and it's going to be a lot more complex than whatever I just explained. So I'll just shut up and I'll let the hacking begin. So it kind of looks like I'm almost done. Took me a lot of hours to complete the build end to end, but I'm happy with the results. Let me demo the application real quick for you guys. Hello people, so the build is complete and the link to the GitHub repo and the compiled APK is in the description box in case you feel like contributing or you just want to use the application. And also I populated the data a little so that the application doesn't look very empty. So before I end this video, I'd just like to mention that I'm extremely new to YouTube and I'm trying to make unconventional videos in the space of development and design. So you watching this particular video till the very end means the world to me. So I'd like to thank you for that. And I would like you to have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.